Here. There you go. Have a good meeting.
Thank you so much, Seth. All right. The Scituate School Committee is committed to providing an environment of respect during meetings. We ask all members to interact in a polite manner, even when there is disagreement. We value the participation of our community and want all participants, including marginalized and minoritized communities, to feel welcomed and respected. We ask our committee members and all who participate to commit to these standards to support and respect our community. All right, I will call the October 7th, 2024 school committee meeting to order at 6 o'clock. And that being said, we will start with public comment. No public participation and seeing no hands raised virtually. Okay, let's move on. We will go on with our student reports, Jane Ryan and Jonah Rydell.
Thank you for having us. We wanted to start off with some athletic updates. So every one of our fall teams is still tournament eligible for this season. They all have a winning record thus far.
Let me get your mic on.
You.
There you go.
Oh, hello. Is that on?
You can pull it right.
Okay.
That's what I had to do.
And they are all still in the hunt for the league title. And the girls soccer team and football team are still undefeated. I think girls soccer is like third in the league, which is awesome.
And then we just wanted to celebrate. Mr. Adams ran This Is Our House at Scituate High School, and both of them were run at Scituate High School, but both the high school and middle school had their events on Wednesday and Friday. And it was just a lot of fun and great community building, as well as students in our AP Psychology course participated in an interactive simulation that mirrored the process of neurocommunication within the human body. After learning how the brain works, they were asked to physically demonstrate the process of how the brain transmits information to the body, and each student was assigned a role as the brain, body, or another motor or sensory neuron communicating between the two. The students got a chance to put what they had learned into practice and visualize a complicated process, and just an example of some of the learning that we do in Scituate High School.
Our next update is, I'm not sure if you all are aware of the Sailor of the Month program that we have in Scituate, but each month teachers and students can elect their peers or teachers to win a Sailor of the Month award, and roughly 10 are chosen by administration after that. So we wanted to shout out the 10 winners for this month. Mr. Cooney, Akira Roman, Otto Brenner, Alice George, Wesley Robertson, Tess Sabia, Jana Downing, and Caden de Montigny. So that's them.
And then just a little bit of guidance news. On October 8th at 6:30 in the library, the SHS School Counseling Department will host a financial aid workshop for parents and caregivers sponsored by the Mass Education Financial Authority. So anyone interested, please come into the building tomorrow. The college representation visits are underway at SHS. We already had 2 college visits, and we have 24 colleges and universities coming to HHS to meet with students in small groups. The admissions officers are often the staff reading our students' college applications, and the students have been highly encouraged to attend. So far, we've had a wonderful turnout of students taking advantage of this unique opportunity, and I've also heard from other students how much they enjoyed it. On Thursday, October 17th, next week, the school counseling and our METCO program teamed up to send a group of 10 and 12th graders students to historically black colleges and universities college fair at the Renee Center in Boston, and the PSATs will be held at SHS during the school day on October the 29th for all sophomores and the 30th for juniors who have signed up for the exam. Just to prepare everybody for the upcoming SAT in November.
And then our last announcement, we kind of wanted to continue our segment from last week about sharing what inspires students at Scituate High School recently. So this was one student. At Scituate High School, I am inspired by the history department. I feel that all of the history teachers care so deeply and passionately about the content they are teaching. It makes me feel so passionate about what I am learning. So are all of the history teachers for the classes they teach and the clubs that they run.
And then a Similar quote taken from the same poll. At Scituate High School, I find that all my teachers inspire me not only to be a better and more interested student, but a more confident and educated individually. Especially through the music program, I have been able to find my voice, close friends, and learn through music and apply it to other parts of my learning in life. And with that, we'd like to end the student report.
Thank you.
Fantastic, thank you. Dr. Prakash.
Yeah, I love the student voices that you're doing. Is that only in the high school or is that across the district?
Currently, it's only high school.
Is there a way that we can think about implementing it in the middle school and potentially in the elementary schools?
That could be great. Yeah, this came from a poll from the Scituate High School leadership team that meets with Mr. Loringer kind of monthly or bi-monthly.
Yeah.
So it would be great to expand this to all of the high school, maybe eventually the middle school and elementary schools.
Yeah, I see Mr. Gates is in the building, but I don't want to put more, I mean, Mr. Beatty's in the building, so maybe we could get that going in the middle
That
school.
would be great. Any other questions on it?
That sounds fantastic, thank
Thank
you.
Thank you for your time.
Thanks so much. All right, a presentation here, Superintendent Burkhead and Principal Arranger, the National School Development Council, New England School Development Council Award presentation.
Good evening, everyone, and can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
I know Mr. Loranger doesn't need the microphone, so I'll use it. We're here for the first time tonight. Each year, we try to think of things to celebrate our students. It's the reason we're here, and their families, and the great work they're doing. This evening, we're going to celebrate a couple of our seniors for the National School Development Council. It's a group of educators who allow us to acknowledge seniors in our district that are exemplary. And I'll read their description of the award, and then we can add some more, myself and Mr. Loranger's opinions, and then we'll give out these awards. So the NSDC award is presented to high school seniors who have consistently pursued a high level of academic effort and who have also served as positive role models for the student body. Recipients of the award exemplify admirable character and accomplishment. So this is an awesome one. The way I look at this is if you look in the dictionary into Scituate student role model, you'd see these two individuals' pictures in there, I think. So they exemplify not only the academic piece and the effort, but the character. And this was important to us to identify these two students. And for those reasons, but also to invite them here tonight, we thought it was that important to acknowledge them and also to invite their families too. So they're here in the audience, and I asked them, after we give each student the award, if you could maybe stick around real quick and get a picture with Mr. Loranger and I, and go from there. So I'll turn it over after I announce. So the two seniors we have tonight. Okay. So the first award will go to Caitlin Quinlan. So congratulations, Caitlin. The second award goes to Nikolai Polkovich.
So when I sat down with my leadership team and we sat down and took a look at the description, these two names popped up right away. So Caitlin and Nikolai, congratulations right away. There was between guidance and administration team, these two names popped out right away. So I'm just gonna read a little quick little paragraph about each. Caitlin Quinlan is an accomplished musician and scholar. Caitlin has illustrated subject matter in both AP English composition and US history, scoring a 5 on both exams. She holds leadership positions on the History Bowl and robotics teams and is also a member of the principal's leadership team. She founded the Scituate High School Mandarin Club. Caitlin also volunteered for Scituate Facts, counseling younger students, and is a positive role model at Scituate High School. Congratulations, Caitlin. Nikolai Volkovich, an accomplished musician and scholar. He has illustrated academic master in AP Environmental Science, Chemistry, and U.S. History, having scored a 5 on all 3 of these exams. He has worked to create a more inclusive health education curriculum, incorporating LGBTQ plus elements. He also volunteers outside of Scituate High School, working with younger students with disabilities. Nikolai is also a captain of the Scituate High School swim team. Congratulations, Nikolai.
All right.
Go ahead.
All right, well, they're taking their photos. Let's do Camp Warrendale. Mr. Beatty. Yay.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks for having me tonight. I'm here on behalf of Team A and Team B camp coordinators for this year. And surprisingly, we did not think we would be back this year because Camp Warrendale was put up for sale at the end of last calendar year, and they told us it was our last time attending. And we just got a call last month saying they are staying open for one final season. So we are here tonight to seek approval for our 2-week stint at Camp Warrendale for April 28th to May 2nd for our Team B and May 5th through May 9th for Team A. This will be our 35th year attending Camp Warrendale, Scituate Public Schools attending. It's gotten better every year, even though it hasn't been updated. It's just the experience itself gets better every year. It's great for our kids to build connections with other 6th graders as they are building new friendships. In terms of the academic piece, they are connected to the Mass Curriculum Framework for different curricular opportunities. And it's kind of one great way for us to get to know parents and families as well, because we cannot do this trip without 60 to 100 parent chaperones, parent caregiver chaperones. And so the details of the trip, again, April 28th through May 2nd for Team B, May 5th to May 9th for Team A. The cost will remain the same as it has for the last 2 years, which is $550 per student. And there will be fundraising opportunities available to students beginning in end of October. So we're excited that we have one final year at camp.
Sad. It's our last group.
You want to come chaperone?
No, I did that.
It's gonna be in Sweden.
All right, we'll take a motion on Camp Warrendale.
Go ahead, Janice, you're so touched.
I am touched, yeah. I make a motion that the school committee approves the Warrendale trip as presented for the last time.
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Thank you.
Actually, before we do that, did just want to say congratulations to the scholars, but didn't time that properly, so the scholars have left. But for the record, just really proud of those students, their efforts, all they do for the high school, and how they have an impact on their peers, as we know, and just very impressive overall. And I like the comments about character. Certainly, they have very strong characters, and it's really good to see them recognized. All right. Next field trip here is the Walt Disney World field trip for IXL.
Is this on? Yeah. Good evening, school committee members. Thank you for allowing me to speak to you tonight. My name is Michael Tinko. I teach here at Scituate High School, the 18 to 22-year-old IXL classroom, which is a sub-separate classroom for students with severe disabilities. I came to the school committee last year at this time and asked permission to go to Disney, and we went, and it was a great trip. I appreciate it very much. We would like to go again. Traditionally, the IXL does this every other year. We'd like to go to again next year, next October at this time. So this is why I'm asking you guys now for permission, and that is because some of our students who did not get to go on the trip will be turning 22 before the 2-year anniversary. So it would be best if we went next October. I believe it's October 19th to the 24th. It'd be a Sunday through Friday trip, which is a little different than what we asked last year. And that is because this group that will be coming might need a little more time to adjust. We want to have more of a travel day, get down to Florida, and then go to the park. Last year we had a great group. They were very enthused. It was very boom, 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 no time wasted. This might be a little slower vacation with this group. This trip is really great for our program. It's very encompassing in everything we do. We work on life skills and active daily living, and this is an opportunity for the students to show what they've been working on the last 7 to 8 years, and end the program with a memory. So thank you.
Yeah. All right, thank you so much. I'll take a motion on Disney for IXL students. Janice? Or Peter?
I make a motion that the school committee vote to approve the IXL Walt Disney World overnight field trip as presented.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry. Good job.
Okay,
That's good.
and so it is.
I don't need a win.
No, okay. You can go if you want.
You can go anytime.
Leadership report. Assistant Superintendent Lynch. You're up.
Well, so once you're getting ready, I just want to introduce the MCAS presentation for this evening. A little different than in years past. Mr. Lynch has come in, and we have spoken about this, that it's all hands on deck with our MCAS. And so the principals will be here helping to present, as well as department chairs and curriculum coordinators. Also taking into account the feedback from the school committee last year during my evaluation process, that we wanted to see areas of strength, things we're proud of, things we're doing well. Also, in full transparency, things that we need to improve on in areas of growth. So you'll see some of that tonight as well. And then the final thing, which is why we're all here, is to learn and grow. And what do we do next? So how do we continue the great things we're doing? And how do we improve on some areas of growth that we've identified through this information? So you'll see that throughout the presentation. And I do want to apologize for on the presentation with the kids. Nikolai and Caitlin took to rush them out of here a little bit. That's our first time, so I'll learn to let them stick around. So thank you for that. I'll turn it over to Mr. Lynch.
Good evening. Thank you, Superintendent Burkhead. Tonight we're going to share our MCAS and accountability data. I think the two goals of this presentation are showing our district, school, and state trends related to MCAS and accountability. Sort of a complex system, so we've tried to make it provide a high-level view while also acknowledging all the details. And secondly, as Superintendent Burkhead said, showing the steps we are taking to drive improvement and support all students. As part of that work, we acknowledge that our principals, department chairs, curriculum coordinators, and central office staff are essential in that, because we all work together directly with teachers on curriculum and data, and to help our schools, district, and students improve. So this is a team effort. I just wanted to start with a little bit of a statewide trend, in case, just to let you know how results were across the state. Essentially, ELA results were a little bit lower in all grades from last year. Math improved in 3rd grade, but most other grade levels were flat. And science showed improvement in grades 5 and 10, with lower achievement in grade 8. Again, this is just an overview for the state. So accountability isn't very easy. So I just want to include a couple of slides from the multiple webinars that we attended. Essentially, accountability comes down to two ratings. One of them is a normative rating, which is a percentile that compares our schools to other similar schools. And the second rating is called the criterion reference percentages. And that's essentially, how does our own district perform against the targets that have been set for our district? As part of that tonight, you'll hear some references to what are called selected populations. Those are identified by the state. They're listed out on the bottom of this slide, but I'll just read them aloud since they're kind of far away. The selected populations that DESE looks at include the all-student group, which, as it's stated, includes all students. The lowest performing students is, there's a slide in here, but it's the 25% of students that have been tested at least for 2 years in the district. Another selected population is high-need students, and that selected population is comprised of students with IEPs, English learners, former English learners, and low-income students, all together in one group that the state refers to as high needs. English learners and former English learners, students with disabilities, low-income students, and major racial and ethnic student groups. So when there's specific reference to those are populations identified by DESE with specific performance targets that every district is paying attention to. I think the reason for that is to ensure that success is for everybody. And so over the past 15 years, we've seen more focus on selected populations.
All right. Do you want us to ask questions while we're going through or all at the end?
I think it would make sense if you would ask questions as you have them, particularly since our secondary principals will join us for the first 12 and then we'll transition. So
I have a question.
Sure.
Just to kind of generally about the 20 students, because there's a lot of categories. Do we look at, I can't imagine like same 20 students every category. So is there data on students that fall in those categories and if they, more than one category? Like is that, like some students might be low performing, high needs, low income,
correct. Students can be represented in more than one group.
Mm-hmm.
And is your question, do we look at each of the selected populations?
Well, I know you look at all those different categories, but do you find yourself focusing on the students that meet more than one category?
Yeah, and I think I would just say generally, and I think this is a good question for us as a group, is that this data is what the state uses for the accountability system, whereas throughout the course of the year, we have other ways of looking at data that encompass all these students and maybe even more specifically, since the state doesn't go into the depth of detail if the minimum number isn't met. So for some of our smaller groups, we're looking at those throughout the course of the year.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. This slide just, again, for your information about how the accountability system works. In the lower right-hand corner, it just breaks up that. I'll show you this in 2 slides and it's more clear, so I can skip this. Again, 2 ways of assessing a school. On the left is the percentile, the normative component, which just compares achievement and growth and compares it to other schools across the state. You're just given a percentile. So in a couple of slides, you'll see some of our schools are given a percentile. That's a normative component. That's compared to other similar schools. The criterion reference part, how are we doing against the targets set for Scituate, which are established usually in like January. So just big picture, this was a little graph I referenced on the earlier slide. All schools are categorized into these 6 areas. I added this little red line to show that our schools are in the not requiring assistance or intervention, which is the federal and state way of identifying schools. One of our schools is in meeting or exceeding targets. The rest are making substantial progress toward the targets. So that just identifies where our schools fall big picture. If your schools require assistance or intervention, it would be focused, targeted support, or broad comprehensive support. Every school and district in the Commonwealth is assigned one of these categories. If you go on the public profiles, this is the language that's used.
So schools of recognition, it's not just for growth. I didn't realize it was for also exceeding targets in district or state,
Criteria,
whatever, yeah.
that.
They're recognized for high achievement growth and or exceeding their targets.
Okay.
Which is against themselves.
Against themselves, yeah.
So this was the overall big picture that we just created to represent the, sorry, I can't move that little block on the right, but that just says 2024 normative accountability percentage. So that's our schools compared to other similar schools with similar grade spans. That's in light blue. In the orange is how our district and schools performed against the targets set for them with their cumulative target percentage on the far left. So as explained earlier, this is the formal classification given to our schools and the cumulative target percentage, which you'll see in the following slides. So this is an example of our target percentage for our district. And so you'll notice in the lower right-hand corner, there's the percentage from 2023, the percentage from 2024, and then it provides an overall, then we're provided an overall percentage. So essentially, just going back up to the language from the earlier slides, overall classification, not requiring assistance. We've made substantial progress toward our targets. And then the 65% represents how we're performing against our own established percentages. This is for the district. I think the most important bullet on this one is the one that talks about how points are assigned. Points are assigned based on progress toward our targets. 0 is declining, 1 is making some progress, all the way up to 4 where we would be exceeding the target. And then these are calculated for all schools, districts, and student groups. This is just a more formal breakdown of how the lowest performing student group is determined. But as I said earlier, it's the lowest performing 25% of students who've been at the school for 2 years or were tested in the school the year before and in the district the year previously. So I know this slide is small, but there's just a couple of things to point out for you. Online, each one of our schools has this accountability breakdown. Inside the slide deck, there's a link to each of these for our schools. One thing I would point out is just that the focus on, you can see on the left-hand side, it talks about how all students perform. And then on the right, it has the lowest performing 25%. And I think this helps to see it because all students are taken into consideration, and then we're given, we earn points also based on how the lowest performing 25% perform, both on growth and achievement. So that's an important distinction to look at. When you see the blue, that refers to achievement. Green is our growth scores, and also factored into that for high school are the graduation rate, the extended engagement rate, and dropout. Absenteeism factors into this as well as participation. So this just provides an overall grid of how points are assigned. And from this, we wanted to share with you that as a district, we have 3 out of 4 possible points for growth in ELA and math in grades 3 through 8. That high school graduation and engagement rates are strong. Science achievement at the high school is strong, and then the growth for grades 3 through 8 for our lowest performing students is notable. This grid also shows a couple of areas for attention. Chronic absenteeism and math achievement for our lowest performing students are areas that we're focused on and need more attention. Growth at the high school level for the aggregate can also be stronger. So the aggregate is our all students population, and more focused on the lowest performing students' achievement in grades 3 through 8 is needed. So again, that shows you how it's a combination of measurements of growth, but also of achievement, because we have our grades 3 through 8 lowest performing students having one highlight and one area for attention.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you, can you, I don't know if this is on or not, I can't tell if these things
There,
are
that's better.
working.
Yeah.
Can you reconcile that they're in both categories, that the 3 through 8, the highlight that 3 through 8 for lowest performing students is notable, but then we also say that it's needed? So can you speak to that a little bit more?
Sure. So the 2 factors you can see here that are assessed are achievement, so how high scoring a group can be versus the improvement that they're making. So you can imagine a group can be high scoring but not making a lot of improvement. And so we have a group that's growing but not necessarily achieving at the target that's being set. So it is possible for selected populations to be in both.
So a 2 as opposed to a 0, is that how you're interpreting it, Ryan? Is that what you mean? That they're showing growth, but it's just not meeting the target, because it's not a 0, it's not declining?
That's correct.
Okay.
So, right, and like 2 out of 4.
Right.
As a, we think it could be 3 out of 4 or 4 out of 4. If you compare that to, like, just for the sake of this graphic, ELA achievement for the lowest performing students at the high school, that's 4 out of 4. So we want to see points that look like that for all of our populations.
And this is for the lowest 25%.
That's correct.
So their growth could be strong, but their achievement could still not be high.
That's correct.
Except at the high school in math, because they're at 0. Right. Okay.
So now this part of so this is a district-wide perspective right on this slide. And we wanted to provide a little bit more of an explanation of all the things that are publicly available. So just to frame our work tonight, each of the graphics that we'll discuss are publicly available by viewing our school and district accountability report cards, as well as our assessment performance. The piece that we added to this was a little bit more talk about what are the specific efforts that we have underway within our district that are aligned with the strategic plan that focus on the growth and achievement and other efforts in our district. So it's a little bit like taking some of the state of the district information and then infusing that into the teaching and learning assessment that that the tests measure. So first we have our secondary principles, and Principal Loranger is going to take us through the graph of the ELA grade 10 math and then science, and then Principal B will do the same for the middle school.
Thank you for having us. So Ryan, I would like to thank all the teachers, department heads, and administrative team for working really hard with our kids every day and helping us come up with a plan on how we can improve things. So the key points in our ELA slide, our meeting or exceeding expectations, it went up 7% in English, which is very encouraging. Met or exceeded target for all categories except special education students as well. So our next steps, we're going to continue to make progress and improvement in student attendance. And we always gear attendance is important. They have to be in school to learn. Continue to use Lexile data and ELA writing pathways to improve instruction and assessment for all students. We are adding WinBlock literacy supports for some of our lower performing students. And Mrs. Mesner is reviewing student responses as a basis for reflecting on refining writing instruction and be a little more specific on where they, where they're not doing well so that we can gear some instruction towards that. Our second slide is the math slide. Our percentage went down 4% for meeting or exceeding, but for exceeding expectations, it went up 7%. So that was a good sign. Our next steps for math, we're going to implementation of a new 6 through 12 math curriculum that started this year that I think is going to have a really huge impact on our scores and student learning. We're going to explore implementation of the intervention model of the MTSS program at the high school and better utilize math support classes such as fundamentals and problem solving to help some of our students that are some of the lower performing students.
Can I ask a question about attendance?
Sure.
I know efforts have been strong with that. Were you all surprised to see that that was an outcome, that there was still some gaps there?
Yeah.
Or is it certain populations, maybe there are bigger gaps than others, but
The general, I think we had a real good start last year to it, and it was really, and then it went down. So we're revamping and going back at it again this year and continue to work with families and get students. The beginning of the school year has been positive. Yeah, so it's a constant battle, and meet with other principals in the district for meetings, and everyone's going through the same thing, and we're kind of just trying to all battle it and just to understand the importance of being here. We're not going to ever stop continuing to improve attendance, and we'll always have that as a main focus. Yeah. Okay, our next slide is the biology MCAS. Our percentage of meeting or exceeding went from 66 to 71%, so up 5%. That was good. We continue to grow while shrinking partially and not meeting. Exceeding targets for all students. We exceeded the targets for all students. Met targets for lower performing and low income subgroups as well. Some of our next steps is build assessment and feedback systems for science practices. Continue to embed curriculum platform to improve into our instruction, and continue to develop and refine biology strategy courses to support students with specific needs, which is something that's really important that we have them in a class that they can go ahead and learn some of the things they need to learn to improve their test and some of the portfolio buildup that they have to do.
so up to 30% of those students have to retake the biology MCAS now in 10th grade?
No.
No, there's, for students that do not score over 470, those students don't meet the competency determination, so that's more of the 5%. So students who are able to score in the partially meeting range are able to meet the competency determination.
Wow, okay. Gotcha.
The next slide is just a comparison to the state, where we are for Scituate High School compared to statewide, and it's favorable in all three subject matters: English, math, and our science and technology engineering group. And the last slide is some of the additional accountability. So for chronic aptitudes, we met the target for all students, but we did not meet it for high needs, low income, and students with disabilities. So one of the things we did is we asked our guidance department to connect with some of the students that we are seeing on this list in a one-on-one connection to see if we can find out why students aren't coming to school and see if we can improve that attendance. And then for advanced coursework, we exceeded the target rate for all selected populations, which was good. We do some fun things at Scituate. We have an MCAS rally that we do before the test, and we bring them all down to the pack. And the reason why we started doing that is we found that we met with students and guidance gave me feedback on some of their one-on-one meetings. And some of the kids literally would say to the guidance counselor, I just didn't take it serious. I just didn't try, I didn't care. So we started this MCAS rally to get them down and pack and rah them and try to explain the importance of the test itself. Implementation of the MTSS practices, which, it's a whole child review process that Ryan does a great job at Gates with. We're starting to involve that now in ninth grade. We're starting to tackle that as well. And continue AP celebration breakfasts and things like that to stress rigor and to improvement and, challenging themselves and to taking higher level courses.
Do you want to go? Either way. Good. I just had a question or comment, and then I was curious about your thoughts. So in the slide with the purple, the SHS grade 10 comparison, I guess I struggle to say when I hear the interpretation as favorable, because the story to me is every school in the state is in there, and we are a high resourced small town. And so I just wonder, Ryan and Bill, when you think about those or look at those numbers, like, what are you thinking about? Because 64% just doesn't seem like we're meeting our, goal of excellence. So I'm just wondering what you're thinking about.
Yes, thank you. It's a good question. I think we debated this slide, but I think it's important as we started that we include the state. Personally, it's a low bar.
Yep.
And I think, I think in future slides and future state of this district presentations will be including some, as Ryan referred to, some of the schools that the state compares us to, like schools. So we'll have those, for this particular presentation, since we had so much information, we kind of didn't get into details, but in the state of the schools, we will. So this was kind of a one catch-up, but I agree 100% that this is not our bar. It's a very low bar. And I agree that we, even though these, may look good, we're here tonight for full transparency, that some of these numbers, I think explained earlier, looking at the math at 64, that, we can do better, and we will. So I think that's our message tonight is, no matter what you see, even things that we're doing well, our whole motto is that we can do better. But we also want to support things that we're, doing well and kind of continue those, and also to make sure that we support our teachers and that they have what they need. Like I said, the resources. They haven't always been there for all things, like the math curriculum that we just purchased was not there. The literacy curriculum that teachers didn't have for many years at the elementary level a few years back. So we are identifying some of those needs to support our teachers. And I think once we, identify those, and that's kind of the next steps type of thing. And that's what we look forward to presenting on at the, in the spring is, okay, out of those next steps, what do we accomplish? And then following into next year, we should see results there. So good point.
I guess the follow-up too, and I'm not trying to beat you up there, Bill. I guess maybe the better question for me to ask is, what do you want to see on this table? Like, what's realistic to think about, right? I mean, yes, it would be great to compare to schools, but as the leader of this district, what are your goals for us? And maybe Ryan's going to get to that.
Yeah, well, I think my goals are the next meeting. So I'll bring that up, and for the first time in 5 years I've been here, it will include MCAS. So we'll talk about that. I think it's just been something that we haven't specifically addressed. We've gone high level, but we haven't gone deep enough. So I think with some of the information we're seeing here, we thought it was important to include that, have this meeting as a kind of pretext, and then the next, during my goals, you'll see some specific goals that we'll talk about that exactly.
Yes, did you have a question?
More like a comment or a question, I don't know, about the math, the grade 10, when you're comparing the MCAS scores from year to year, if you look at it at first, it looks really jarring. It goes from 61 to 48%. But a closer look is the exceeding expectations doubled. But the partially meeting expectations, that went up. So, not by a lot.
I think those are stated, I'm sorry.
Yeah, and I think the new math curriculum that's put in, Tara's working really hard with that. I think that's really gonna pay dividends. I think it's really gonna, it's a curriculum that it adds consistency to the vocabulary and the problem solving, and it works 6 through 12 grade on vertical alignment, which is really important. And I think it's gonna take some time, but we're gonna see some improvement with with some of the stuff that we're putting in place. We're hoping.
And I think this, the accountability system, I know we spent 10 minutes on it at the beginning, just about the lowest performing 25%, and that's a goal that's measured in the accountability system. But it's a stated goal for us too, of also expanding our exceeding the expectations population, and that's not necessarily measured through the accountability system. We have a lot of teachers and students who work really hard, and some of that's captured inside of this system. But I think growing the exceeding is something that we feel like we can do, and is something we'll be focused on as well. So I think it was highlighted there, but I think that's an area of growth for us, and really focusing on all students. And that slide shows a little bit of, shows some progress in that direction, and with the teachers and the students that we have, we think that there's more ground there to be gained.
Just a quick comment. I think that's really important. I'm glad that you mentioned that, because there is sort of like those levels categories. There's folks that are in that meeting that really should be in exceeding with a little bit of support, and for every category down the line, really. I mean, there's probably some kids that were right on the line there, and if they just had something, they might have been pushed into meeting, and that would have really shifted. We don't have that many. Our population is small overall. We really are. We break down into subgroups. Sometimes there's like 6 kids. So when you look at the data, it's sort of important to know that we really have a small district overall. But nonetheless, I just think I like that you pointed that out, that there's growth to be made sort of for everyone at each, no matter what stage they're at, not just the bookends, if you will, of this.
So again, just for your use with the slides, you can always,
Sorry, Mike. Just a quick question to follow up. On the not meeting expectations for ELA and for math. I don't know. I would expect you have the data right now, but it's 5% ELA and 3% math. Do we know if those are the same students that are both not meeting in both those categories? And not that it really matters, but my question, the follow-up is, what do those students look like in the following year? Do they repeat those subjects, or do they just get some additional supports in grade 11 as they take on their new course load? Just kind of curious how those students are addressed.
So we know that there's, in some cases, a student may appear in both. It's not a one-to-one. And then for the students that would appear in the not meeting category for science, it's usually not somebody in 10th grade, because students take bio in 9th.
Sorry, I meant 9th grade. I meant 9th grade biology.
Yeah. No problem. So there are, so the supports that we use, for students, you see the reference to the Innovation Career Pathway Grant to provide more support for students. There's also the use of specific classes in all content areas that the high school wants to explore to support the students that need to get across the line and also learn the content. Principal Lorenz, did you?
Yeah, we have, for biology, we have a course called biology strategies class, and it's a portfolio-based class. And so any student that did not meet the expectations, they're in that class right now, and they're working on portfolios. And as they work on the portfolios, they're learning and studying for the test, like they're preparing to retest. In the portfolio itself, if they do not pass the test and they return in the portfolio to the state, they can be they can pass the MCAS test, and that in a sense passes it. But they're learning as they're building that portfolio, and that's helping them prepare themselves for retaking the test as well. It's a really good support.
Thank you.
So at this point, we're gonna focus on the information about Gates, and Mr. Beatty will take us through those.
Certainly. So very similar to the first slide, we saw many of the results you'll see for Gates are fitting with the trends seen across the state. In ELA, we saw a slight dip in our achievement. So again, moving from 64% to 59% when we're talking exceeding or meeting expectations. New to my knowledge as a leader, learning a lot about the targets. That was a really interesting thing this year. And so we met the target for ELA and had high growth in the area for our all students subcategory. And for our white students, we did not meet the target and had lower growth for students with all other subcategories. So for us, that's a way for us to say not only, tier 1 instruction, but drilling down on specific populations of students and looking at what those supports look like on a daily basis for the students. We are excited about the next steps for this as we have refined our literacy program. We have 2.0 FTEs dedicated to literacy support at the middle school. We have tier 2 supports, which are pull-out additional support that students get, and it's based on data. So MCAS is just one data point we use. We use about 15 data points. And so students who kind of are in that orange category right now of partially meeting expectations or not meeting expectations are identified for that type of tier 2 and tier 3 support. Inside the regular classroom, our goal is to get those that are in green to blue. And so we are also working on making sure that the instruction we're providing at the tier 1 level supports growth for all kids. Similar to what Principal Arranger said, we are using a Lexile assessment to assess students' Lexile data at each kind of point during the school year. We're using that in order to kind of talk about our ELA and social studies writing pathway where students receive specific instruction in writing. And we're not just teaching writing to the MCAS test because that would be easy to do. We want kids to excel and do more than just be able to answer a question on an MCAS. So we want them using higher order thinking. We want our instruction to allow students to write and apply their knowledge in a variety of scenarios, the MCAS assessment being one of them. So that's how we're doing in ELA. We're excited about the next steps because this is the work, we have the people for it, the resources, and we're excited to see where we go next in our next steps. For math, we have a lot to celebrate with math. I mean, the graph itself might be a little scary looking, but when we look at the percentage of students meeting and exceeding, we grew slightly, which is great. We at Gates exceeded the targets in math for our high need students, for our low income students, and for our students with disabilities. We've never exceeded the targets. I went back and looked. So last year, our students in math exceeded and met the targets set by the state, which is something to celebrate because our kids have been working really, really hard. And it means that, although their achievement might not be in the exceeding expectations, they are meeting and exceeding the targets that we have set for them, that the state has set for them. And that's where we want to be. We've increased average. So this graph is about achievement. There's also a graph about student growth. Last year, one of our, sad points was that on average, our students, really did not grow much when compared to how they did the year before. We have moved into the typical growth category. And this is all without a new math curriculum. So when we think about the math curriculum that is high quality instructional material going into place, coupled with the supports that are starting to work, we are going to see increased achievement. We're going to see increased growth. And so we're super excited, as Principal Arranger said, about that new math curriculum. We also have 2.0 math specialists at the middle school who have started to kind of use a data-driven approach to who we are providing support to. Again, in that small group pullout or one-on-one intensive support. Our acceleration academies that we offer throughout the district are geared towards STEM with a math component. So we are hand selecting students and really having conversations as one way for students to kind of shift their mindset around math and see it kind of used in different ways. And then we also, our director of supplemental services has gotten us some tutoring, math tutoring, high dosage math tutoring that is happening twice a week for students who are in that lowest performing through Imagine Learning. That started in September. It's a year-round thing. It's 2 times, it's personalized tutoring. And the students are eating it up. They have great tutors from all over the country. And that coupled with great classroom instruction, strong material, we're excited for next year to see kind of what grows and what sticks there. Finally, for science, technology, and engineering, a reminder that this is cumulative assessment for grades 6, 7, and 8. So our 8th graders take this. This is 1 of 10 days of testing that students in 8th grade sit for. This is typically the last one that students sit for, so I'm just painting a picture, and it's June. So we're pleased in terms of the percentage of students meeting or exceeding kind of stayed consistent. We want to kind of grow more in that blue category. We are using a new science curriculum that went into play last year. We're excited to see kind of how that has an impact once the students are through 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, and see how that kind of changes not only the results, but their experience in science. And this year they are adjusting what the science, technology, and engineering MCAS looks like. So we're gonna have to spend some time helping students to not only know the content, but to be able to apply their knowledge in a way they haven't been able to apply before. It used to be just a standard test with look at the graph, answer your multiple choice, write a short response, and now an application piece, which will be interesting because sometimes students who don't do well taking tests can apply their knowledge in other ways. So it's nice to see the state moving in a direction of perhaps allowing all different learners and test takers to be successful, and we're excited to see what the results show for next year. So that's a snapshot of life at Gates with MCAS. We have a lot of areas for growth. We're inspired by the work because we care about ELA, we care about math, we care about STE, we have tons of resources. This is one assessment. We have tons of assessments in ELA, math, and STE. So this is just one data point that we use. It's an important one. We care about it, and we'll continue to grow.
I had a quick question, Ryan, regarding the math, talking about the exceeded targets and increased growth. I know that you and your staff worked super hard on all of this. Did you anticipate that? Like, can you tell at the student level, the data that you're tracking, did you anticipate that you were gonna see growth in the MCAS based on what you have at the student level?
I would say yes.
Okay.
And when you're drilling down and looking at the individual students and then seeing kind of how they did, the data leading up to it allowed us to, kind of predict the success or the rate of success for each student. And I would say we weren't surprised. We were, which means to me, again, this new math curriculum that we have is going to help. It's not the, instruction matters, all of it matters. And we've been doing some things right, and we've been working hard, and then you put the right resource in place. I feel like it can only get better.
Yeah, so because I asked because it seems important that, using a sort of assets-based approach, that we're identifying interventions that you feel like are being successful, and where do we replicate that in other places? So I'm glad to hear that.
Just a comment, really. So to your point about kind of all the components matter, and so many, yes, like the curriculum obviously is majorly impactful. But to something Mr. LaRanger said earlier too about the rallies and just the attitude and the mindset piece, I wish we had our student reps here still, because I know that they know, obviously, especially at the high school level, that the weight of the MCAS versus other tests like SATs that they're taking. So there's going to be that natural, maybe not high stakes mindset, even in obviously middle school, probably even less so. But just I'm wondering if there's an opportunity for tier one sort of just the way we approach it, even as a district with all kids, and even our lower grade students, just it's a serious thing. We should want to do well. We can celebrate it and try to get excited, but also I work with graduate students taking LSAT and MCAT, and they come to me for support and therapy, and it's about staying calm, doing your best, putting your, just the whole kind of mindset approach to this. So I'm wondering if, even just that's a piece to this puzzle as well. So I'm just curious if we as a district maybe want to consider, how we approach it just more globally from almost even like a mental health standpoint.
I think if you have ever visited Gates last year, our goal was to kind of transform the mindset around math.
That's
And
right.
so the We Are Math people are everywhere. We had a monthly math challenge in every room.
But maybe that's what made a
But
difference
I
here.
do think it did, and I joke with the teachers being like that 25 minutes where you counted pennies and did this, that, really, but
Confidence.
mindset and confidence and how we approach things. We don't want people coming to the MCAS biting their nails, saying this is the most important thing in the world.
Right.
It's important. Kids are prepared for it. We want them to feel successful, and that messaging needs to come through loud and clear. And then that's great if they can channel that on the day of the assessment. But this is something we should be talking all year. Like, we can do hard things. We don't give up. We persevere through hard challenges, and I feel like for us, math specifically, like to see a improvement in that area in results for specifically students with disabilities who have specific math disabilities, like that's huge. And I wish I could find a way to say like it's as a result of, I think it's a result of everything, the instruction, they're getting the resources, but also just the way we talk about math and the way we show that we don't give up, that when we get it wrong, we do it again. So
But that's great, and I think Gates is a good model for that. And even no matter what happens in November with the MCAS, it's an experiment almost in test-taking hygiene almost, like just getting them prepared for whatever their future is, no matter what direction they go in, they're going to encounter some certification exam or more. So, that might be a nice sort of focus for us, I think, overall.
Very good. This is if we have any more questions for this component, because we're gonna switch to the elementary portion.
I just have a general question as to when we obviously these results just became public recently, but how recent did we actually get the data, like on a per pupil person? I guess my question is, and I'm sorry to be focusing on high school, but I know that we currently have the graduation requirement. And I guess my concern is that for those students who did not meet expectations or not meeting expectation, has the plan already been devised and are they already participating in their supports to pass the exam? Meaning, we just found out about this data last week, but did they know and or their parents know sooner so that that plan can be put in place?
Yeah, we put them into two different courses. The math group, the students that we identified as, not even before they fill the test, but identified as high needs, the students that we looked at through past data that they were struggling in math. So we populated our two classes, problem solving and fundamentals courses, which directly impacts and teaches them. Almost some of it teaches them how to take the test, and like you just said about the mindset and to be confident and all that, and they're working on the skills that they need to work on to be able to pass the test, both cognitively and emotionally.
Okay. And to follow that, when will families expect to get their individual MCAS results? I know they usually come in the mail.
Yeah, families will have them within the next 2 weeks. We also believe that we can deliver these digitally in your documents folder inside of Aspen, so it's not, so everyone will get it and it won't be misplaced. So we're working on that technical solution. Schools will have paper copies, should that be more, but we feel like that's the best way to deliver it. We're working with our tech team to ensure that's the case, but within the next 2 weeks.
Great, thank you.
Actually, I have one more point about what I was saying before too. The other leg to this though is that homeschool connection. Parents, we don't know, we know what we think we know about MCAS, but we can help talk to the kids about these things just the same. So even just to kind of create a better homeschool connection in so much as like what you should say to your kid to prep for this, what it means, they ask, the little ones especially, they ask, they're curious. Like, we have a big test, we're practicing for the MCAS. They don't even know what the acronym is necessarily.
They just want to get the candy.
They want the candy, that's all they want. Exactly. The gum.
I do have a question about the ELA. Because across from 22, 23, 24, there's not a huge change. I mean, maybe from meeting expectations.
Talk about the middle school.
The middle school, yes. But under key points, it says met target form and had high growth for all students. Is that, you mean in this graph? Because it doesn't really.
So the targets that are set by the Department of Education are not necessarily based on achievement, it's based on our own kind of cohort. And
That's
so-
what I wanted to clarify.
Yes, so that was that one, and then in terms of growth, every student gets a score, an achievement score, which falls into one of those 4 categories, but then they also get a student growth percentile, which compares their growth to the cohort of kids that had taken it with them and scored the same score the last year. We want kids to do better than them, and so we have moved from students wherever it says low growth and high growth, we have moved low typical growth in all other subcategories. So the growth categories, there's 5 of them. There's exceeded, there's met, there's low growth, there's low typical growth. So we want to be high growth everywhere, and we want to be high growth and high achievement. In some cases, we're high growth and not high achievement. We want to be both. And so even though it might look like, 36 and 41% of our kids are partially or not meeting expectations. Why we can say that we met the target was because DESI's target for us, given this cohort of students, was a certain number.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Great, so at this point, we'll transition from our secondary to our elementary principals. Thank you. So just the beginning here, this graphic just illustrates grades 3 to 8 compared to statewide, and then the percentages at the bottom reveal the percent meeting and or exceeding as an overall percentage, and then on the right, the student growth percentile. So it's just a way to get a sense of the percentages of our students meeting or exceeding grades 3 through 8. And now we'll go in alphabetical order of our schools. We're trying to, again, the goal is to present all the information to you, but also be concise and then focus on the work that we're doing. So we pulled the overall MCAS performance for all the grade levels. We can't, obviously, if we did the 3 content areas for all 4 schools, we'd be into many slides to do that. So we feel like this can capture it with the key points explained by our principals, and then the next steps based on those. So that's sort of the format for the elementary portion, to keep it comprehensive yet focused. So I'll turn this over to Principal Craddock to talk a little bit about Cushing.
Thank you. I think, as everyone knows, being in my first year, I was certainly eager to get my hands on both the accountability and also the MCAS testing results. So I come, I guess, into this conversation tonight with certainly feeling eager to take this data and be able to kind of run with it. So I'll take an opportunity to kind of kick off the elementary to share a brief look into the data at Cushing. Although the data indicates that we are making substantial progress toward the designated targets, an area of growth for the student population is certainly decreasing the overall percentage of students who are not meeting or partially meeting expectations. certainly working very hard to drive this number down as we march into the spring. Another goal of the building is to increase the number of students exceeding expectations in the area of third grade math. That was a conversation that was had with some staff and also our math specialists around what would be a focus area for a particular grade level. And then additionally, we're excited to share that the student growth percentile at Cushing was above 50%. So taking, I guess, consideration into what Ryan was just discussing earlier around the SGP, and that's a pretty good mark for the building and trending in a good way. The next slide is the accountability key points. Again, shares out key points with a wide range of accountability data. Cushing met achievement targets in both the areas of ELA and math for all students. There was a decline in ELA and math with our students who are identified as either high needs or having a disability. The science achievement for all student groups exceeded the target, while several selected populations had an absenteeism rate that increased. And this certainly will be an area of growth for our building going into, I guess, moving forward in this current year. So in response to those 4 bulleted points there, I'd like to share several proactive strategies that are being implemented at our building this year to provide additional support to both our students and our staff. First, we are now aligned with the other buildings and implementing a departmentalization model for our 5th grade team. So certainly there were considerations in terms of scheduling and collaboration between those team members and getting ready for that to be done with fidelity at the start of the year. Next, we have made changes to our WIN model, which now allows our curriculum specialists to provide targeted interventions in the classroom during this block. So this will certainly allow effective collaboration in what will be more of a co-teaching classroom environment. This additional support in the classroom will include small and flexible groupings to better meet the needs of all learners. So I'm thinking about kind of strategic groupings and the support that our specialists will be able to provide our classroom teachers. It should be extremely effective for our students. So the absenteeism measure is something that I was really interested in kind of further examining the last week or two and creating some proactive measures for several selected student populations. I think similar to kind of what was brought up earlier in conversation. So the following measures will be implemented in order to emphasize consistent student attendance. Frequent communication centered on this topic to create community engagement. Establishing a supportive and inclusive environment in the building for all students, whether you're a student that's at risk or a student who is new to the building who might have greater worries or concern than a student that's been in the building for several years, and really just thinking about all the trusted adults and who they are and being able to identify them to support, again, all students. Creating an attendance focus. So I've developed a CARES team this year that is it's our mental health staff, it's our health office staff, it's our certainly school administration, it's our health office staff. And one of the focuses for that group this year is taking a look at those students that were at risk by pulling attendance records from last year. And again, goes back to the communication, the partnership with those families, but really using the data to be able to track and address the individual needs of those students, because that might be one of our, again, areas for growth. But I think we're talking about kind of smaller cohorts that we're looking to better support. And the data is going to help us with that. The curriculum specialists at Cushing this year have additional opportunities to work closely with classroom teachers during common planning time blocks. They've developed a schedule that will provide them with more opportunities to analyze student data, collaborate on frameworks, and provide feedback. And then furthermore, this is more of a kind of a common practice, I think, that have been happening, but our CPT times outside of those times with the specialist will be ensuring that we're having staff effectively collaborating with each other on curriculum and assessment. And the final bullet, I added that final bullet because I think that speaks to the data meetings that follow benchmark kind of phases throughout the year, and focus will really be on creating kind of personal conversations around individual data and, again, supporting certain students that might be either lagging in a certain area academically or, again, maybe creating conversation around how we can get those students more engaged or even just into the building. So those are the I would say interim measures, at least measures that we're taking this year to hopefully address a couple of those bullets that are listed up top.
You want us to wait until everyone goes for elementary?
If you have questions, it's appropriate.
Yeah.
Specific to Cushman.
Well, I mean, it is, it might be, I might focus on it and I notice it in other slides, but something that sticks out to me looking at this today is it's concerning, really concerning, that Cushing, maybe other schools too, but is below state even or equal to on some of the partially meeting expectations. So to me that signifies there's something missing in some of the interventions, perhaps, if we're looking at students who are partially meeting. So I really think we need to take a serious look at the WIN model that's been in place for a few years now, because we're just not seeing sustainable growth at all. It's really bad. Like elementary is concerning. It's foundational. Then they go to Gates. It sort of just builds upon. So I just think there's got to be something, some story, some rationale behind something within why to explain sort of why where we're at when we've had resources implemented at elementary now. So I'm just curious if we're going to take. I just really think we need to take a deep dive into some of the interventions. Maybe it's WIN, maybe it's something else, but and again, it might not just be a Cushing, but for some reason my eyes really focused on some of this partially meeting compared to the state. So we look at, when you're looking at the bigger picture here, that we're above the state in some of this globally, great, but when you dig in on some of the data, it's concerning.
Yeah, that's a great share.
And I know it's only a few weeks in for you. So
so part of the reality is certainly I've had opportunities of getting into classrooms and seeing what the month of September has looked like K-5, but really I think being intentional about getting into those blocks of times and really seeing the design of it and seeing how we are moving the needle with those students that either are, again, probably fall underneath that tier 1 because I think in a lot of ways we are targeting and doing a great job of MTSS through tier 2 and tier 3. So I think part of that is being intentional about providing feedback to specialists, to classroom teachers in that area. Because I think our staff, in full transparency, is craving more support and more feedback around tier 1. Hence the reason for us, reviewing the MTSS model. And then the second piece is really delving into those CPT times with the specialists and the classroom teachers and understanding what the discourse is and ensuring that student data is at the top of our priorities. So I'm vulnerable right now and not having lived it last year and seen it, but I'm glad that that's a share because it's certainly something that I will press and I'll make certain that it's something that I'm reviewing with staff and asking the right questions.
Thanks.
Yeah.
I'm Christine Sheehan. I'm a principal of Hadley School. So as we look at this chart here, which is a summary of our MCAS results for 2024, there's a few things that really should jump out at me at least. So one of the things to highlight is that our mean student growth percentile is 58th percentile for ELA and 55th percentile for math. So that is something that we like to see. It would be categorized as your typical to high growth for those areas. But if you take a look at the partially meeting category there, to your point, Nicole, there is really room for improvement in these numbers. So we really have to focus on decreasing the percentage of students who are not meeting or partially meeting expectations and moving those groups into the meeting expectations category. One other thing to point out on this slide is that for third grade ELA, we didn't have any students exceeding expectations, which was below the state. So that is something that we need to focus on, which appears from the data to be writing to be a big piece of that. So that is something that we will be working on also. I just think that partially meeting column that you mentioned is really somewhere that we need to focus our attention, because historically, those aren't the numbers that we've always had.
So you're thinking third grade writing is the focus area? Did you say third grade writing is a focus area?
I think when you look at their particular data, particularly for Hatherley anyway, the writing was somewhere around 38%, I think, of getting all of those points. So yeah, that is somewhere that we need to focus on for that. When you, generally speaking, when you want to move kids forward, a lot of times it's writing. Because that's where you're synthesizing all of your facts and getting it out on paper. So that's something that we want to do for everybody, but that's just a glaring 0 right there for that. When we move on to accountability, so Hatherley did meet its achievement targets in the ELA and math for all students. But when you sort of drill deeper to those selected populations that Ryan mentioned earlier, our achievement levels for high needs and students with disabilities declined in the ELA and math for 2024. Our science achievement, we did not meet the target for our science achievement. A positive is that our absenteeism rates exceeded the target, so that was really nice to see. I believe that was across all groups. And so what it becomes when we look at this data, what do we do about it? And so we need to continue to make improvements in our MTSS model. So it's interesting that you mentioned that. Really, we've been having a lot of, I've been having a lot of conversations as we're setting up those groups to make sure that we are really focused on growth and achievement for all students. So at every level of those win groups that we have, how are we moving kids forward? How are we helping them to achieve? So I do think there's a lot of conversation to be had there, and just making sure that when we're talking about what we're doing within those groups, that our focus is on growth and achievement. Also this year, we'll have an opportunity for all grades to collaborate in cross-district grade level teams. We haven't done this in several years. So in areas, if you think about science, we're departmentalized across all 4 schools. So you can have those teachers who are a little bit on an island. So it's important for grade level teams to be able to get together, really talk about best practices, what's working, what's not, and work together what's being done across the district. So I think that's a great opportunity that teachers are really excited about. Also within the MTSS model is the Tier 1. So we need to make sure that we are challenging all students, building their stamina, because MCAS takes a lot of stamina to write a couple of essays in one day, but we've done that before, right? So we can do that again. And so it's really just making sure that we're reaching all students. And we want to continue to provide enrichment opportunities and family outreach to encourage attendance. So we were very pleased to see that we exceeded the targets, but we still have to keep working on that because the targets increase each year and we need to make sure that we're hitting those.
I will say the attendance global situation here is confusing to me, because is it like, I guess I want more information on attendance and I don't know how much we can get. And this is chronic absenteeism, not long weekend taking, hockey tournament going. Is it that, or is it more depth to it in terms of maybe anxiety-based mental health sort of challenges? Solutions might be different based on what you're all seeing district-wide. I don't know.
I think that it varies from student to student. I don't know if you want to address that, but it can change. For some students, it is a mental health or emotional health issue. Sometimes it's vacation. Sometimes it's not wanting to come to school for whatever reason. So I think you really have to look at it individually. Did you want to add to that?
Yeah, I was just gonna say that there's small populations, subject to change. The way that if you just go back to coaching, I have it in front of me with the accountability system, both for the aggregate and for the lowest performing 25%. We didn't meet the targets there, and so I think it can change year over year, but it's just the whole school efforts, like our principals are talking about, making sure we're connecting with families, emphasizing the importance of attendance. We can move the numbers, but when you look into the complexity, it's probably a mix of both. And so what are we doing to get students there? And what's interesting about even when we struggle with attendance, our participation is excellent. I know we talk about emphasizing the MCAS is important in almost all areas. We have 100% of our kids taking it, and if you drop below 95%, you automatically move into a intervention needed in the state accountability system. So it's not, with a small population, it's not hard to do, but that's just a bright spot for like getting our students here, showing that it's important, and then we have to get them here for the other 176 days to get the learning that they need. So we agree, but in our district with our numbers, we think we can get attendance higher.
Sorry, do you mind if I just add to that real quickly? I think that's where the data and ensuring, and I guess based on my personal experience, I think that's where, the attendance letter and sending that out and getting that that information out to families is certainly effective for some, but picking up the phone sometimes and having that personalized conversation around, really what is the challenge? I mean, truly, sometimes it is, a lack of that child having a trusted adult or another adult outside of that classroom teacher that, can be that next step for that student to make them feel safe and supported. So I think that the data, if all 4 buildings are taking a look at, the past data, obviously some buildings are, in a little bit of a better position than others. But I think those personalized conversations are typically what's most effective in the long run.
I guess I'm just trying to discern whether is attendance a suspected issue because we think it's impacting outcomes, or like if outcomes were higher, would we even be focusing on attendance at all? Are they related? Do we even know?
I'm gonna jump in here for a second, if you don't mind. I had a huge focus at Wampatuck. Am I on?
No.
I had a huge focus on attendance last year at Wampatuck, and when we get to Wampatuck, you'll see we did exceed the targets. It's challenging because there are circumstances that we cannot influence, right? We have many families taking vacations that are not on school vacation week. Many. If you look at our attendance between the 3 terms, term 2 is our lowest attendance rate because that's when families take vacations and they go skiing. That's when hockey tournaments happen. And I don't want to sound like I'm making excuses, but like these are the conversations I have. And to Principal Craddock's point, I was on the phone a lot last year, talking to families about attendance and the importance of it. And we cannot teach these kids if they're not here. And it's not as simple as putting something into Google Drive or to, on a Google Doc, but that's what we're being asked to do for families that are missing whole weeks of school multiple times a year. So, we had a lot of growth in our attendance, but that's probably because they just didn't want to hear from Principal Reardon.
Right, and is that sustainable for you? That sounds like not a great use of your time on vacations if it's mental health
there's
see it
the mental
differently.
health piece as well,
Yeah.
and you're absolutely right, we do approach it very differently. And we know who those kids are, right? We know who those families are, and we're working super closely with them. But I just always come back to, if they're not here, we can't teach them. And it's not the same to get makeup work. You're not getting the same experience as when you're in class with explicit instruction with a WIN group, with 5 days a week consistently, progress monitoring, all of that. So I think we're up against a lot for a lot of different reasons, so.
Thank you. We're on to our Jenkins component.
I did not jump in on the chronic absenteeism because that's something I'm talking about as well, and I knew I was next. Okay, so for Jenkins, our highlights as a school, and if we just look at our 3rd through 5th graders, more than a majority of our students met or exceeded expectations. 58% of our students met or exceeded expectations in ELA, and 66% in math overall for that whole group of children, from including 3, 4, and 5. Our highlights that we're very excited about are our science and technology. 73% of our students met or exceeded expectations, and 72% of our students in grade 4 math met or exceeded expectations. As it was mentioned earlier, our expectations should always be that our children are all exceeding expectations. We should have that goal for all of our students. We do have some single-digit percentages in our grade levels in content areas, which we're going to be analyzing as a staff. Something that's interesting this year is DESE is no longer releasing any of the questions and not releasing, we used to be able to get the children's actual essays to look at, which were fascinating, but they're no longer releasing that information. But we do have the standard and we do have the question type. So we'll be looking at that really deeply at, in certain grade levels and certain content areas. For student growth percentile, we are looking for an absolute minimum of 50 because 50 is 1 year's growth for 1 year's worth of instruction. I always get tongue-tied when I say that. And our high growth is when it's over 65. All grades in all subject areas, we had typical or high growth, and a standout was 5th grade ELA. At 70% and 4th grade math at 66%. I did want to highlight the effectiveness of the grade 5 departmentalization. Jenkins is now into our 3rd year of full departmentalization. Lisa Masterson teaches science and social studies. Kelly McDonald now teaches ELA after Kate Duffy's retirement last year, and we have Susan Murray teaching math. And since we have adopted that model, we have seen really significant increases in our performance of our students in ELA. We've gone from 45% meeting or exceeding to 69% with a SGP of 70. Math has gone from 53 to 59 with an SGP of 61. And science has jumped from 49 to 73%. And I think that's really a reflection of the fact that these teachers are able to really focus on their content area. And it's not only that the teachers really just love the model, but the students are also experiencing this kind of transitionary experience as they move to Gates, where they're learning from several educators. So that is something that we're really excited about at Jenkins, is how well the 5th grade departmentalization is going. For accountability, Jenkins did get classified as meeting or exceeding targets for our accountability rating. We met our achievement targets in ELA and math for all students. We met targets for all our selected populations in math. We're really excited that we exceeded the target in math for our lowest performing students. and our achievement in ELA and math for high needs and students with disabilities did decline in 2024. As I mentioned, our science achievement for all students exceeded the target. And when we look at our accountability points and ratings, we really took it on the chin for chronic absenteeism. And I'll just add on to the comments from my colleagues from a few minutes ago. We know exactly who those students are. Chronic absenteeism is when a child misses more than 10% of the school year, so more than 18 days of school. Just coincidentally, there are 18 students. I worked with those families all through last year with phone calls, letters, meetings, teachers, the nurse, and the reasons why vary so tremendously, from intensive medical situations to multiple family vacations, to transportation issues where they don't want to send their child, or if they don't have if they're not feeling well because they have no way to come and get them, just all sorts of different scenarios. And when we talk about chronic absenteeism and all those factors that play into that, as Nicole mentioned, the mental health needs, is there anxiety issues? It really begs the question of how we support the whole child. And we look at our lowest performing subgroups, and it's really critical to look at how we're really supporting kids across all the domains: the academic, social, emotional, health and well-being, and family, through an integrated system of support. And everyone's mentioned MTSS tonight, which is multi-tiered systems of support. It is a strategic initiative of our strategic plan. And this year we are beginning, Jenkins is the elementary pilot for the Systematic Student Support Academy that Gates started last year. And we're really excited to be the elementary pilot for this. All the elementary principals are being included in our content sessions as we begin this 3-year journey. We're in year 1. So in year 1, we're going to be looking at forming the systems and data structures to begin the whole child reviews, where we're discussing every child in the school, not just those who need remediation. And it's really exciting for me because I just believe to my core that supporting the whole child is how they will learn their best and become their best. I did want to give a shout out. You've heard about WIN groups tonight. Last year, the Jenkins Instructional Leader Team focused on a book study, which was called, the book is called WIN Time, Fearlessly Transforming Your School. And through that book study, the instructional leader team had some focus areas. We did some teacher surveys and how we can best leverage that WIN time every day for our students across the grade levels. And the teachers are working on their goals right now, and it's been very exciting to see some of the grade levels grabbing hold of that and looking at how they can really leverage WIN time to address the needs of all students and not just the students who require remediation, looking at enrichment for all kids. Thank you.
I can ask this question. Thank you.
Oh, I know you're gonna ask.
Yeah, I'm sorry. No, this is, when I looked through this initially, I was, I guess, most impressed overall with Jake. It was like, wow, it's like, from my perspective, I'm not an expert in reading this, but it looked like Jake had some great growth scores. And
Thank you.
with that being said, I have to ask the tough question. Grade 4 ELA.
Yes.
Obviously, we can see the data here, but is there something that's identifiable that you know that you're already addressing for next year? I don't know if it was a curriculum issue, if it was a student population issue, but the difference between the math and the ELA achievement is very interesting.
Yeah.
It's the same group of students.
Thank you for asking that question, because that has been a real curiosity for me as well. I actually talked to Ryan about that this morning. I have never seen a 0 in that column as a principal before, and it is, it's alarming. And so I can tell you that I have pushed out the MCAS data to grades 3, 4, and 5. I'm actually meeting with grade 4 tomorrow. They do have this data. And we will be looking at the individual student scores. I can tell you beyond a doubt that we have students who are perfectly capable of scoring, exceeding expectations, and why there's a 0 there, that's what we need to find out. It's something that we need to really understand why that happened. And Christine had a similar experience in 3rd grade, I think, right? So thank you for asking the question, because it's something that I have been very curious about myself, and with the 4th grade team, we'll really dig down deep into that, and I'll probably bring on board Megan Gregory, our curriculum specialist, to help us with that too.
It just there's such a difference in the ELA and math scores, and it's the same student. Maybe it was an attendance issue when some of the writing programs were being reviewed. These kids were on vacation. I don't really know.
I don't think so. And I never want to blame it on the kids. Never. We need to look at our instruction and how we are, we just need to know what happened. And that's why I really wish we could get their essays. But they don't release their actual work anymore. But yes, I completely agree with you, and I'm completely as concerned and puzzled by it as you might be.
Right, thank you.
I wonder if it was like the way the question was worded was just difficult, or just sort of ambiguous for the kids or something.
Yeah, well, but it's an outlier.
Well, for the essay.
For all the schools.
Yeah.
At least 17.
Do you think it's because they used AI to score it this
Yes.
way?
I don't know.
I feel like it would have been across the state.
But they all are down.
Not this year.
Not just here.
Yeah.
It's just weird.
Ready for one?
That's so weird.
Always.
Okay, so obviously you can look at the data here. I'll just address the 3rd grade ELA right when we start here. And similar to Mary, her similar responses, obviously that is an area for growth right there in the 3rd grade ELA. And, I have a lot of the same questions you all do. I feel very confident in the WIN model. I would say that is running very consistently and is strong. So my wonder, and what I would like to take a deeper dive into with the grade level teams, is the Tier 1 core instruction. So we've spent a lot of time, as you know, because we've come and talked about it quite a bit, about the WIN groups. Last year, we spent a lot of time talking about setting goals for those groups and working to progress monitor the efforts and making sure kids are working towards and meeting those goals. And if they're not, adjusting our practice to help them. So I feel good about that. What I would say I haven't taken a deeper dive into over the last year or so is the Tier 1 core instruction. So that's what I'm thinking. I am presenting all this data to the Wampatuck staff on Wednesday at our staff meeting, and then we will start diving deeper into this and seeing what we can do to support our students so that we can have more that are meeting and exceeding the standards. 4th grade ELA as well, in the meeting and exceeding is, right at 50%, but like your point earlier, when you talked to the secondary team, we are a very well-resourced district, and we should be higher than that for sure. So our achievement at Wampatuck did not meet the standards. However, our growth is still good. So our students are making growth. They are in the typical or high growth in all grades in all subject areas. And then our chronic absenteeism did exceed the targets. And like I spoke about earlier, that was a huge focus of mine because I don't know if you remember, but last year the Wampatuck's chronic absenteeism was very, very bad. So that became a goal. Actually, after looking at all this, I actually revised my goals with Superintendent Burkhead, and I made that a goal. And I partnered with also our, I call it the Wellness Committee at Wampatuck, and also the nurse. So Lauren Bennett also had a goal around absenteeism, so we partnered. I spoke at any parent event that I went to. I spoke about absenteeism and the importance of getting your children to school, and I feel like that resonated. So you can see in ours that our absenteeism dropped drastically. We exceeded targets by quite a bit. So I felt somewhat disheartened when I looked at the data and had a nice conversation with Ryan Lynch about it. It's like, okay, in my mind, I'm like, if you just bring them to school, we will teach them. Well, they brought them to school. And we taught them, but our scores aren't reflecting that. So I have to remember, like, some of these children, this is absenteeism over many years, right? So we need to give us a minute. So that's why I'm gonna go to my next slide here. One of the, I'm jumping around a bit and I apologize, but I do think that we have to stay focused on that. Like, it can't, we exceeded our targets, awesome, but we need to continue to get the message out how important it is. We ask kids to come to school 180 days a year. That's not that much when you think about how long the year is. We have many, many vacations and holidays. So if we could just get them here for 180 days consistently over time, I feel very confident we have the staff and the resources to get all of our kids, like Mary said, 100% of them meeting and exceeding our benchmarks or our standards. So again, we did not meet our achievement targets in ELA for all students. We did meet our achievement targets for math. And, you know, I do think it varies. Like, even though we put an emphasis on ELA and math all the time, I do think we are working hard to change that mindset, like what Ryan talked about with kids that, you know, we're all mathematicians, right? So we work really hard to get kids to not get that perception that they can't do math. And for some kids, that's a little easier. It's a little more black and white. But I think we need to continue and keep that up with ELA as well, right? We're all readers and writers. And we have to continue to grow that love of reading and writing and get our children to see themselves as readers and writers and authors of their own stories. Our science achievement exceeded targets, and our growth for our high needs and our lowest performing students was high. Again, I already spoke about the absenteeism. So at Wampatuck, next steps that I focused on, I mean, we have lots of next steps, but these are the ones I pulled out to highlight for you this evening, is again to stay focused on the absenteeism, take a deeper dive and really look into that core instruction in ELA and what's that looking like for all students and how we are supporting that within our WIN groups. We're going to continue to focus on goal setting. And like I said, we had a big focus on that last year, but we need to stay focused on that. And then that progress monitoring in our WIN groups. Questions?
I have a question. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I don't know if I have a question as much as I think, Tracy, I'll take your wondering. I have a wondering, right?
Okay,
So
sure.
and this is for really everyone in the room. So we all recognize that educating our kids is an incredibly complex formula, right? And I've heard mention working with families around absenteeism, high dosage tutoring, mindsets, acceleration academy, curriculum, investments, and even repairing equipment, technology. Principal Craddock mentioned collaboration, WIN models. What I'm wondering about is, and I think you started to get to it, Tracy, is I see come home as a parent. I am not a K-12 educator. I get that. As a parent, I see worksheets come home and I see computers come home where they do math things on those, right? And I trust that my middle schooler is doing those things. I guess what I would love to hear more about as a parent and also as a school committee member is what's the pedagogy look like in our schools? Because I know that there are teachers doing awesome things, and I just would love to hear more about like, how's pedagogy contributing? How are we supporting our teachers who want to do new cool things? How are they helping each other? Just like, I don't know, just opening the hood a little bit to let us see some of that cool stuff. Because again, I go in for a meeting and I trust wholly that our teachers are doing what they need to do, but I don't, as a non-K to 12 teacher, I don't really have a comparison to say, yes, that is, like, I don't even know what questions to ask. And so I guess I'm just interested as a school committee member to hear more about that. Like, I know, like Mr. Poyer, I know he's doing amazing things because my son says, I know Mrs. Cleggett is doing cool things, but it's only because I hear secondhand, right? So it's anecdotal. So I know, I would just love to see, I don't know, maybe presentations about that potentially. Does that even make sense what I'm asking? I just feel like pedagogy is missing from the list that I've accumulated tonight. Would just love to learn more about it.
We can do that.
Right. That'd be awesome.
I agree. My question is sort of about my view. I mean, when we're looking at ELA, we invested in that program and we're not seeing any substantial change with having implemented that. So obviously not for tonight, but just curious sort of why and what to do about that. What's the problem? Let's fix it.
That's where I think
yeah.
the tier 1 core instruction, that's my view right there. So you're right. And we're now 2 years under our belt, 2 full years, right? So the first year is a transition year, learning curve. I would say even the second year a bit too, but we're in our 3rd year right now. So that's a great question.
Question.
Regarding the concerns about the partially meeting expectations, and we all know that there are concerns there. But if in most of the schools that, in the accountability, where you've met achievement targets in ELA and math for all students, I'm having a hard time like reconciling that we've met targets, but that column to me doesn't reflect that we've met targets. So maybe you could explain, do we need to change the targets? Does that make?
We don't set the targets.
Okay, well, so if we're meeting the targets,
We're not there. Yeah.
so, huh?
Yeah.
We're not meeting them there.
Did not, right, all the companies did not meet target.
But they're not setting the standard.
Yeah.
But we've met the achievement targets in we've met the targets.
And there's the growth.
That's where like, I'm
For all
not,
students, when you extrapolate then the subgroups within that and just look at the subgroups, they were high. For me, anyway,
Yeah.
for Hatherley, what they were.
but do you know where I'm like confused?
Yes, and I think Ryan
Because under the-
probably could do a really good
Yeah.
job explaining the
Yeah.
targets.
Do you know what I'm trying to say?
I think I need a little bit more information.
Okay, so we're bringing up concerns about partially meeting expectations columns in all the elementary schools. But then we're saying that we've met the achievement targets in ELA math for all students. So I'm having a hard time reconciling that statement with what we're seeing in that column.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you just look at, if you look at grade 4, the partially meeting column, we're just looking at Wampatuck because it's up here. The school and state have the same percent of students that are partially meeting expectations, right? In grade 4 math, Wampatuck is lower, presumably because they have the 53% meeting, right? Plus the 20% exceeding, right? So there's our 70, right? So 73% meeting or exceeding, and then and then there's 23% that's partially meeting. So we can meet our targets. I think what we're.
Still have that.
Yeah, and what I'm hearing is there's a little concern over the size of the partially meeting, and we want that to slide over to meeting or exceeding, and I think we're all focused on that. And I think we're all saying very similar things, that we want to see more all groups move. We're tracked to the all student subgroup. Within that, you have high needs and, low income populations, to ensure we're not just like burying the performance of some populations we care deeply about in the aggregate, which is the reason why the state does that. So I think we're all on the same page with our focus in different places. And the only thing I would add to this is that the elementary interventionists and the classroom teachers and the data, in my short time here, 60 days, I have seen a real willingness to dive into the data, to pay attention to the benchmarks, to get it in teachers' hands. And I think the MTSS process that we're beginning at the elementary level is going to be help us to best use a lot of the data that we're collecting. So we're spending a lot of time tonight on MCAS because it's important. And then there's a lot of other data that is compiled right at this time of year when students do their benchmarks. And the middle school talked about some whole child review data that it has, including attendance and, discipline and things like that. So we just need some really good things have been put in place, it seems to me, from my perspective. And now we just need to use that data to be better predictors of who needs what and when, because this is really hard to support these students right now. When some of them have left our elementary school and have gone to our middle school, when some of these students just got the information that they needed to be put in a course to support them, that was just in the nick of time when they took this assessment 3 months ago. So we're focused on this. We're also focused on what data are we getting in the year to try to be more dynamic in our responses. And I think a lot of that's happening with the assessments that we have in place. We just need to be able to respond a little bit more quickly. And I think there's some really good structures in place that we just need to make a few turns, and we'll be even more headed in the right direction.
Yeah, I think that would be, I'm glad you mentioned that, Ron. I think that would be, I see collaboration among the teachers and the specialists for sure, the interventionists, and looking at data. I think this idea of tracking time to intervention and seeing if that shrinks, I think would be really critical, because I think often just from talking to people in the community, they worry that while we're waiting, our child is sitting in the classroom doing this. And so like that time to intervention, if we could watch that number over the next year. So I think that would be really interesting to be able to say, not only are we using the data, but we are like rapid response, right, to what they need.
So at this point, if the committee, would you have any more questions on the Wampatuck piece?
Do you need more questions?
We'll leave Wampatuck.
So
The school looks
We love
great.
Wampatuck.
Front of the school looks
Looks
awesome.
beautiful. It does.
We should release these poor principals. I think we can hold them. Held them long enough.
that's great. Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Thank you.
And we're just going to finish this from the central office perspective. Michelle and I are just going to talk about 2 slides, and then
As you kind of transition, I do just want to say, I mean, obviously acknowledging the hard work everyone's doing in the district. I mean, teachers, staff, supporting staff, central office, administrators. We know MCAS is just one piece to the big puzzle here, and that it's always going to be a work in progress for one reason or another. But appreciate the great conversation and the willingness to be a bit vulnerable tonight too, and just share. It's all in the same vein of helping students meet their potential, exceed them.
this slide was just to try to highlight from our principals and curriculum coordinators some other elementary next steps that we're focused on. This came up on several other slides, and so we just wanted to identify that several of these practices are consistent among the schools, and I think they've all been spoken to. So we're going to turn it over to Director of Special Education to talk a little bit about the thread that runs through with accountability in special education.
just have one quick question, Ryan. The fifth grade departmentalization, elementary principal spoke highly about that. What are the challenges in making that happen? Is it a staffing issue? Is it something that makes it more difficult, or is there some, I guess the question is, if it's successful, as I guess in the short term it has been, is it something that we're looking to do at all elementary schools, obviously, but what are the challenges to getting there?
Tracy's time is up.
I'll come back.
Sure.
Move it.
Sorry, Tracy.
Ryan doesn't want me to talk about absenteeism, so I won't. Ryan Beatty, not Ryan. Yes, there are definitely challenges, for sure. It's trying to fit like a middle school schedule into an elementary school schedule. I've had many conversations with the fifth grade department at Wampatuck about the pros and cons to it. A lot of it is the scheduling, because you're trying to get these blocks of time. You're also trying to get every subject in every day, which is challenging, right? It's hard, and also teaching, you have to teach thematically, right? You have to address ELA standards within the social studies time block, and along with the social studies content. You have to teach ELA and math standards within the science block, while also trying to cover all the science content. And then you have to add in transitions, right? So now kids are moving from room to room. So you think you have an hour block, but really by the time you transition, you get them in, you get them settled, you go over the agenda for it, right? Your time is shrinking. So you have to be very effective and efficient. And it's not a perfect science, it's not. And, but what happens is you get teachers who can be real specialists in their area, right? So our math teacher is exceptional, our science teacher is exceptional, our ELA teacher is exceptional because they can just focus on those subjects. And then they all teach, add in also the social emotional, right? They're all needing to teach character strong, right? Add in band and instrument lessons on Wednesdays. And then all the specials, art, music, phys ed, health, library, right? So we're trying to get all this into our 6.5 hour day, which we really need about 9 hours.
Okay. Thank you. Well, that's helpful.
You want to These ones are tricky.
Okay, is this on?
Yeah.
Okay, good evening. So I'm here to talk about special education. These statistics that are pulled are based on the whole district, which also includes out-of-district students. Whoops. Because they count as well. Every student counts. And also just as a kind of a little bit of background, 18.5% of Scituate students are on IEPs. The district, the state rate is 20.2%. So I'm pretty confident the students on IEPs need to be on IEPs because of their disabilities, and we all know that students on IEPs have difficulty, manifesting their learning, which is why they're on the IEP. So that being said, we do want to do better than the state, and that isn't our low bar, but we were better in all grade levels and all content areas in terms of looking at not only the growth, but the scaled score, but also the anywhere from partially meeting and exceeding expectations. So I looked at those two areas. We did exceed the target in math at Gates, as Principal Beatty had mentioned before, for SWD, which stands for Students with Disabilities, for that subgroup. We also had 9% of 8th graders on IEPs that exceeded expectations in math, so I thought that was a highlight. Our scores improved in grade 6, 7, and grade 8 in math, and also in grade 8 and grade 10 in science, again looking at the scaled score and at least partially meeting. We had a 63 growth percentile for grade 8 math for this subgroup as well. We did not meet the achievement targets for students with disabilities for most schools, as was already discussed tonight. Our scores, again, in partial meets and exceeds declined in many areas. I'm gonna read them all. So we definitely, want to do better. There's a lot of room for growth. So our next steps, besides what you've heard already, collaborating, working on the MTSS for all students to achieve, is we're doing a deeper data dive to really look at the students and the root cause analyses of why our scores are where they're at. So for example, we looked at science and noted that for students that were not at least getting a partial meeting, they struggled in the writing. So they might have gotten 0 out of 4 the writing, and they tended to do better in the open choice. So that leads to, another kind of hypothesis. Is it the writing or is it the science content? So we need to do more on that, but that's just one example. Another thing that we are doing is reviewing eligibility for MCAS accommodations. I noted when I came here as special ed director 4 years ago, Scituate is pretty stringent on some of the MCAS accommodations. They're really following the letter of the law in terms of the not over giving non-student accommodations, but it is a team decision, and that's something that we can look at. And then if that is necessary, change those IEPs as relevant. We're continually reviewing criteria and use of pull-out groups or classes. It's really important to justify, anytime the students are removed, exactly what Principal Reader was saying, the transitions and all that. Every minute counts for instruction. When we are pulling students out, we want it to be, effective practices and research-based strategies for teaching students. And then we're also collaborating with principals and our out-of-district schools to improve attendance for students with disabilities. So, one of that subgroup was 17.7% of students with disabilities are chronically absent, so they're absent 10 or more days. And as some of the other principals mentioned, it's hard to teach students if they're not present with us. We're doing pretty well in terms of full inclusion models. We are at 77% of our students on IEPs are in inclusion, and we've exceeded the state target, which is 65%. And we want to, continue to do that as well, because students are more likely to perform better if they're exposed to that curriculum with grade level peers. I don't know if you have any questions for me. I just have one slide because nobody else went before, and also our kids are counting in their, obviously in their school stats.
Just a quick question about the out-of-district placements. Are you counting the data from students from our district that go out? That's counted towards Scituate.
When you look at the whole district, not at each school, so they wouldn't count under the Scituate High School, but if you go to the DESE website and look at Scituate in general, they are counted.
The students that are out of district.
Yeah.
And
funded by us, not like
Right.
mainly, but
And so the students that come to our district count towards
the students that are tuitioned in.
yeah, they count towards their home.
That's a good question. They may be counted for us because they're enrolled here.
Right.
So they're kind of double. It's counting both ways, I guess. Yeah.
So we've had our questions embedded within, and this process for us is really important. We care about student achievement, student growth. Our department chairs, principals, and curriculum coordinators, they just like our principals talked about, they're sharing this with teachers. Teachers are also, they care tremendously about how they perform and their students perform, so they'll be continuing the MCAS analysis at the student level. And we've shared these slides with our teachers, and we can share them more widely with our community so they can have the same benefit to see what we're focused on. this among many things, but we appreciate the opportunity to share this and the efforts of our principals and coordinators and department chairs in compiling this work.
Thank you.
And teachers.
Thank you so much. Thanks. All right. Subcommittee update here on our Title IX policies. We've already reviewed these at our past meeting and independently. Anyone have any questions or comments, concerns on this policy update before we vote? None here?
No.
Okay. I'll entertain a motion then on Title IX policy.
Okay. I make a motion that the school committee vote to adopt the following Title IX policies: ACGA, ACGB, ACA-R, ACA, AC, and ACAB as presented.
Good job.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, we have minutes to approve from September 23rd. Looks good to me. Anybody, questions, comments? No. Okay, take a motion on those minutes.
Make a motion to approve the school committee minutes from September 23rd, 2024.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, great. Warrants?
No, we're good.
Nothing in here, yeah. Any correspondences? None that I'm aware of. Other business, anyone? Or future agenda items? Nothing. All right, take a motion to adjourn then.
Motion to adjourn at 8:11.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.